Picture a man named Daniel, sitting on a train. The seat next to him is empty, and he's relieved. Not because he dislikes people. He simply wants 40 minutes of silence. No small talk, no music, not even a podcast. Just the sound of the train and his own thoughts. A stranger sits down anyway, smiles, and says, "Long trip, huh?" Daniel smiles back, answers politely, and then feels something small but real. A flicker of disappointment at the loss of the quiet he was quietly hoping for. If this sounds familiar, if silence feels less like emptiness to you and more like relief, there's real psychology behind that preference. It's not coldness, and it's not unfriendliness. Let's look at what's actually going on. The first thing worth understanding is that for people who prefer silence, quiet isn't simply nothing happening. It's an active state with its own value. Researchers who study attention have described something called attention restoration theory. The idea that constant stimulation, conversation, noise, notifications, decisions, draws on a limited mental resource, and that this resource needs quiet, low-demand time to recover, the same way a muscle needs rest after exercise. For people who lean toward silence, this recovery isn't optional or occasional. It's a regular, necessary part of how their mind stays functional. Daniel isn't avoiding the stranger because he dislikes people. He's protecting one of the only windows in his day where his brain gets to simply idle, rather than process. There's also a more physical layer to this. Psychologists who study a trait called sensory processing sensitivity have found that some people's nervous systems register incoming stimulation, sound, conversation, movement, even other people's emotions, more intensely than others. This isn't a flaw or a disorder. It's simply a difference in how sensitively the nervous system is tuned. For someone with a highly sensitive system, a room full of chatter isn't just a bit noisy. It can genuinely feel like more information arriving per second than a less sensitive nervous system would register in the same room. Silence, for these people, isn't a preference in the way some people prefer coffee over tea. It's closer to a genuine physiological need, a way of turning down the volume on a system that's constantly turned up higher than most. Here's where things often go wrong socially. In many cultures, silence in a group setting gets read as disapproval, sadness, or social rejection, as if a quiet person is secretly judging everyone, or simply doesn't want to be there. But notice Daniel again. He answered the stranger warmly. He wasn't hostile. His preference for quiet had nothing to do with how he felt about people in general. It was about managing his own limited capacity for stimulation, so that the energy he did spend on people could actually be full and present, rather than depleted and distracted. This is an important distinction. Many people who prefer silence are not withdrawing from others. They're preserving their capacity for others, making sure that when they do engage, they have something genuine left to bring to it. It's worth being honest about one more layer here, because not all silence is the same. There's a real difference between someone who chooses quiet because it restores them, and someone who retreats into silence because social situations feel frightening or unsafe. The first pattern, restorative silence, tends to feel peaceful, chosen, and reversible. The person steps back into the quiet, refuels, and steps back out again, engaging when they're ready. The second pattern, often connected to social anxiety, tends to feel more like avoidance than restoration, driven by fear of judgment rather than a genuine preference for calm. If silence consistently feels less like relief and more like hiding, that's worth paying attention to, and possibly worth talking through with someone you trust. Most people who simply prefer silence, though, fall into the first category, not avoiding connection, just managing their own energy thoughtfully. If this is you, you don't need to apologize for needing quiet, and you don't need to force yourself into constant stimulation to prove you're friendly. Protecting some silence in your day isn't antisocial. It's maintenance. If you love someone like this, Their silence usually isn't about you. It's rarely rejection. Often, the most caring thing you can offer is simply letting the quiet exist, without needing to fill it or explain it away. Daniel isn't avoiding life by preferring silence. In a strange way, he's making sure he has enough left in him to actually show up for it. Quiet, for people like him, isn't empty space. It's where the recovery happens, so that everything else can happen too.